Late on the night of July 10th, 2024, two suitcases and a trunk were left on the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. Just before midnight, a cyclist and bridge staff noticed something unsettling, a dark fluid leaking from one of the cases. When they confronted the man who had been seen with the luggage, he abandoned it and fled into the night. Inside those suitcases, police would soon discover a horrific truth: human remains. This discovery would unravel a deeply disturbing case, pulling back the curtain on a hidden world of complex relationships, alleged exploitation, and brutal violence. The victims were Albert Alfonso, 62, and Paul Longworth, 71. They were a couple who had formalized their long-term relationship with a civil partnership in February 2023, about a year before their deaths. Mr. Longworth was British, a handyman by trade, while Mr. Alfonso, originally from France but a British citizen, worked as a swimming instructor. They shared a flat on Scots Road in Shepherd's Bush, West London. On the surface, a seemingly ordinary life. But as investigators would soon learn, their private world was far more intricate and, for some, allegedly far darker. The man accused of their murders is Yostin Mosquera, a 35-year-old Colombian national. Prosecutors identified him as a pornographic performer who had been posting videos online under the name I Am Black Master since 2017. Mosquera had visited the UK multiple times, staying at the victim's flat in Shepherd's Bush. Alfonso and Longworth had also traveled to Colombia to visit him. The nature of Mosquera's relationship with Albert Alfonso was transactional. He engaged in sex acts with Alfonso in exchange for payment, encounters that were often filmed and uploaded online. Alfonso reportedly covered Mosquera's travel and college fees. Mosquera told a witness he had a wife and child in Colombia and was participating in these acts just for the money. Despite this, one witness described the dynamic between Mosquera and Alfonso as good, very good, noting they engaged in sightseeing together. The three men, Alfonso, Longworth, and Mosquera, reportedly participated in a sex session together in the week leading up to the killings. The timeline of the crime paints a chilling picture. Months before the alleged killings, in March 2024, Alfonso and Longworth had visited Mosquera in Colombia. On June 8, 2024, Mosquera's laptop showed searches for the value of the victim's home. He returned to England on June 9th, then came July 8th, 2024. Both Albert Alfonso and Paul Longworth were allegedly murdered in their Shepherd's Bush flat. The prosecution alleges Paul Longworth was attacked first. At 11:03 a.m. that day, while Mr. Longworth was still alive, Mosquera allegedly made an online search. Where on the head is a knock fatal? It's believed Longworth was killed sometime between 12:30 p.m. and 1 p.m., suffering multiple blows to the back of his head with a hammer, which shattered his skull. His body was then concealed in underbed storage. Albert Alfonso was allegedly killed later, during a sexual encounter recorded on multiple cameras in the bedroom. He sustained numerous stab wounds to his torso, body, face, and neck, and his throat was cut. Disturbingly, Mosquera was reportedly seen singing a song in Spanish and dancing immediately following this attack, before accessing Mr. Alfonso's computer. At this point, the prosecution claims Mosquera began a gruesome process. He allegedly decapitated and dismembered both men. At 11:07 a.m. on July 8th, Mosquera had viewed an image of a chest freezer and subsequently purchased one for next-day delivery. The victims' decapitated heads and other body parts were later discovered in a chest freezer at their flat. 2 days later, on July 10th, Mosquera was observed on the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol, transporting some of the remains in suitcases and a trunk. He had initially hired a van intending to go to Brighton, but changed his destination to Clifton. It was here, late that night, that the leaking suitcases led to the grim discovery. A luggage label on the trunk ultimately led investigators back to the couple's residence in Shepherd's Bush. The evidence gathered by the prosecution weaves a narrative of alleged premeditation and financial motive. Before the killings, Mosquera's laptop showed searches for the value of the victim's home. After their deaths, he allegedly created a PowerPoint document containing their banking details and accessed a spreadsheet with their online banking passwords. He reportedly attempted to transfer £4,000 to his own account and made cash withdrawals totaling at least £900 before transactions were declined. He also allegedly sent a message from Mr. Alfonso's phone to his manager, fabricating a family emergency in Costa Rica to explain an 8-week absence. The online searches were particularly damning. Wear on the head is a knock fatal. Viewing an image of a chest freezer before purchasing one, and even searches related to serial killers of London and Jack the Ripper. The attack on Mr. Alfonso was reportedly filmed, capturing Mosquera stabbing him during sex, with Alfonso in a submissive role, referring to Mosquera as master. A forensic scientist concluded that the victim's bones exhibited cuts consistent with the same style of saw or power saw. Yostin Mosquera was arrested in the early hours of July 13, 2024, at Bristol Temple Meads railway station. His initial trial began on April 29, 2025, at London's Old Bailey. Mosquera admitted to the manslaughter of Albert Alfonso, claiming a loss of self-control, but he denied both murder charges. The prosecution rejected his manslaughter plea, pursuing the murder charges for both killings. Adding another layer, the murders were classified as a hate crime, a determination based on the fact that the victims were in a civil partnership. However, the trial took an unexpected turn. On May 15, 2025, the proceedings collapsed. The judge, Mr. Justice Benathan, discharged the jury, stating the trial simply cannot continue due to problems accurately identifying the timings of digital evidence from Mr. Mosquera's laptop, evidence deemed crucial. During the trial, unsettling allegations against one of the victims, Albert Alfonso, also emerged. A witness, using the pseudonym James Smith, testified that nearly 2 decades prior, when he was a teenager, Mr. Alfonso had raped and blackmailed him. Mr. Smith alleged Alfonso filmed sex acts without his knowledge and used the video for coercion. While these initial encounters were described as coercive, they later evolved into consensual, paid sexual encounters. Under cross-examination, Mr. Smith affirmed that, in retrospect, he considered himself to have been raped, groomed, and potentially drugged by Mr. Alfonso. This testimony introduced a profound moral complexity. The defense's line of questioning sought to portray Mr. Alfonso in a negative light, potentially to support Mosquera's loss of self-control plea regarding Alfonso's death. It painted a picture of alleged coercion, grooming, and sexual exploitation, existing alongside relationships that were, for some, also described as good. We hear of Mosquera, a self-described pornographic performer, allegedly telling a witness he was involved just for the money to support a family back home. These are deeply uncomfortable truths, forcing a consideration of power dynamics, financial desperation, and the hidden lives lived behind closed doors. The court heard Alfonso had a preference for extreme sex, which Mr. Longworth was aware of and accepted, though he was not involved in those particular activities. But that wasn't the end. Following the collapse of the initial trial, the legal process is set to continue. A pre-trial review is scheduled for June 13, 2025, at the Old Bailey, with a provisional retrial date set for June 30, 2025, at Woolwich Crown Court. The prosecution must now rectify the issues with the digital evidence that caused the first trial's collapse. Key questions remain unresolved. The defense will likely continue to challenge the element of intent required for murder, and may further leverage the allegations against Mr. Alfonso. The hate crime classification, suggesting the victim's sexual orientation was a motivating factor, will also remain a significant and contentious point. Two men, Albert Alfonso and Paul Longworth, are dead, their lives brutally cut short. Another man, Yostin Mosquera, faces a future that could be spent entirely behind bars, having admitted to one killing, but denying murder. The upcoming retrial will re-examine the harrowing events of July 2024, the digital footprints, the financial trails, and the complex, disturbing relationships at the heart of this case. But as the legal process unfolds, one is left to ponder the deeper, unsettling questions. Who were these men, really, behind closed doors? And can justice ever truly untangle such a tragic and multifaceted web?